tell them. Yeah, we are live now.
Okay.
Very good evening to Gauri, who's with me right now, and we are awaiting Manivannan. And to all the viewers, we are back on Poorna Wellbeing Samvaada. And today's topic is very interesting and close to my heart. It is the power of storytelling to brighten a child's inner light. Um, Not just is this topic interesting, Manivannan is just joining us. Yeah. So not just this topic is interesting, but the people we've invited and collaborated with is even more interesting. We have Gauri and we have Manivannan. So while we connect to have, we call him Mani fondly. He's widely and fondly called Mani. Hello, Mani. So you're here and we are live right now. Can you hear me, Mani?
Hi,
Yeah,
hi.
perfect.
Good evening, everybody.
Good
Um,
evening.
yeah,
So welcome, Gauri, and welcome,
good evening.
Mani. So just to share a bit about Mani, Mani is very passionate about children, including children with special needs. He is a big source of inspiration for teachers, aspiring teachers, and parents. He is a guiding light. He has himself traveled the path of conscious parenting by homeschooling his own children. He met anthroposophy 17 years back, and inspired by anthroposophy and Waldorf education, he started Kingdom of Childhood School, which is actually also called KOC in 2007. Prior to that, he was a special educator, and he founded Heart and Soul Foundation, a school for children with special challenges. Now, uh, actually, I had the pleasure of volunteering at Kingdom of Childhood a few years back, and I was there for 2 years. And that's how I came to know Mani and Gauri so closely. And so I'm so excited actually to have them on Poorna Wellbeing page today. Today, Kingdom of Childhood has grown. It has the Veda kindergarten for children below 6 years, Upanishad Waldorf School from grade 1 to grade 4, Kalpataru Curative School for children with special challenges, and the Homeschooling High School Initiative. So welcome, Mani. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Gauri, thank you. Gauri started as a volunteer 11 years ago in Kingdom of Childhood. And then she became the kindergarten teacher for over a decade now. And now she's a mentor to kindergarten teachers. Mani says her specialty is intricate child observation. She can keenly observe how a child's inner moves and therefore how it impacts their behavior. She's very strong in creating healing stories for children. She really knows how to use the right metaphor to bring the right impact and change. And I have been fortunate to listen to a few of her stories, and I have listened to your finger stories. I don't know what you call them,
Finger
and
plates.
finger plays, and not just for children. I enjoyed it too. So happy to have you with us, Gauri.
Good evening, everyone. I'm blessed to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So we have about 21 21 people watching this live today, and two of them share their hearts with all of us. So thank you so much for watching. Now it's 24. Yeah. So let's go straight into this exploration because it's a very beautiful exploration today. So Mani, can you and then Gauri, can you share your journey of working with children, especially using this medium and the power of storytelling?
Yeah, my storytelling experience almost dates back to my childhood, and that is the image that is today working when I give stories to my children. I can imagine my grandmother sitting there with her, legs apart and sleeping on her lap, and the smell of her sari, and the voice that kind of resonates, and then I go to sleep. This is the image of I have from my childhood storytelling. And so I know that good stories are when a child goes to sleep in your story, you see, and the strong
Wow.
sensory impressions like smell, these kind of things that even today, the only rich sensory impression I have of my grandmother is the smell of her sari and me lying down there. So I can see how powerful stories can be. And much later on in life, when I was a teenager, yeah, I was a voracious reader, and I read Gandhi's autobiography. And I don't know what those 200, 300 pages contain, but the thing that I remember even today is that Gandhi's experiments with truth had its
Yeah.
source, its fundamental source in childhood. And yeah, Gandhi had these two stories, powerful stories as a child. One was he read the story of Shravan from Mahabharata, lifting
Hmm.
his
Yeah.
grandparents on the
Yeah.
physical
Yeah.
balance. And yeah, incidentally, this story, I gave it to my children just last week when I was doing the measurement block and helping them to understand what a physical
Grade
balance
three.
was. You see, and the other grade three, yes, I am a grade three teacher. And the other story was that of Satya Harishchandra, where it came in a
Mm.
touring company in his village Porabandar, and then that had a deep impact. And these two stories for him were his beginnings to his experiments with truth. So stories can be really powerful. These all, the autobiography of Gandhi at the age of 14, 15 had a powerful impact on me, you know, and even the story of
Mm.
Punya Koti, the story of the
Yeah.
cow and the tiger, these
Yes.
all these kind of stories had powerful impact on me in my childhood. And most of what I give my children today is based on what I myself received in my childhood. The last thing I want to tell about my journey is when I was 18 years old, I had a nephew, yeah, who was very, who was hearing impaired. And when the whole family was drowned in sorrow, I just took the child into a room every day. I locked the door and I was all dramatizing. I became the lion and I became the mouse because he can't hear. And so I was trying to use as much body language and as much actions in order to help him to understand through a story. And then stories and stories and stories followed for almost 13 years in his life. I used a lot of dramatization, lots of actions, and of course now he's 35 years old, so that's a different story.
Mm.
And when
Beautiful.
I yeah, when I came to a Waldorf school, I have a very powerful yeah, I have a very powerful experience in the early days of our starting the Kingdom of Childhood, and that incident belongs to Gauri herself. Yeah, as a guide, I told her about fairy tales being told for grade one children, and she did the grade one to introduce number one. Yeah, and then that evening when we were reviewing and recalling what happened, she told me, "Sir, I am not able to relate to fairy tales." You see, and then I told her, but fairy tales are what has to be told for in Waldorf school. She said, no, sir, I'm really not able to relate to. Then I said, all right, then try some other story which you are comfortable. And she got the story for number two of the two eyes of Shiva, that Lingam story, where
Mm.
Kannappan, the hunter, keeps his leg on Lord Shiva's idol. And it's a very powerful image, that story. And Gauri, as a very new teacher, came up with that story at that time. And I was sitting in her classroom. And the previous day, also, I was sitting in her classroom to hear the number one story of the fairy tale. But the kind of effect it had on the children and on me sitting in the audience was something words cannot express. And this is nothing to do with the fairy tale or Kannappan story. It has got to do with the connect the storyteller has with her story. I think that is the powerful message here. Yeah,
Beautiful.
I stop for some time and maybe let.
Beautiful. 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 Thank you
That's
so much.
that's yeah,
What a
that's my
message.
journey with
Yeah.
stories.
Beautiful. Thank you. So very inspiring. Yeah. Yeah. So now that he's looped you
Thank you.
in, Gauri, it's your turn.
Yeah. So even though I was not exposed to a lot of stories in my childhood, Deepa, My exploration started after I became a Waldorf teacher, honestly. That is what I would like to say. And for me, stories have always been a very powerful tool in handling challenging behaviors with children or challenging situations in the classroom, or even entry of a new teacher into the classroom, or even to the extent like if I had to present a new material in the class, like a painting brush or a crayon, I would love to do it with a story,
Mm.
because there is a reason to it. Because through my experience, I found out that when we present something to children through a story, metaphorically, through metaphors, when you're going to present, you are bypassing the intellect and you are directly connecting to the soul of the child. The feeling realm of the human being is what you're connecting to. So what happens is children are delighted, excited, and they receive it in altogether a different way when compared to when you're going to deliver something in a very abstract way through
Yes.
a kind of an instruction. So there
Yeah,
is a sea
concept.
difference. Yeah, there is a sea difference when you compare these two approaches. And
Yes.
as an adult, it's always an interesting exploration for me to deal with situations through stories. So that is what
Yeah.
I would look at stories as a very powerful tool. You can just turn around the classroom through your
Beautiful.
spontaneous stories. And when I say stories, no, just to introduce a material also, it need not be a typical ritual of a story of a 10 minutes or a 15 minutes. Even a two-liner, a prelude can become a beautiful story in the
Yeah,
class.
yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
people need not misunderstand like every time story has to have a beginning, a journey, and an end. It is not that way. If you're going to give a
Mhm.
prelude to a live show, it can become a story. And human life is full of stories, right? We are in a live show today. This is a story. How I met Deepa, that's a story. So humans, we have a natural inclination for stories. That's the secret. So it's easy to connect to a human being through stories.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. How beautiful, how simple, how beautiful. So today's topic is the power of storytelling to brighten a child's inner light. And there is a lot of power in the reason why we chose, there is a reason why we chose this topic. So Mani, can you throw light on this?
Yeah. Uh, Inner light, light that shines from within an individual. Just imagine the scene today outside, huh? The way children are growing up. There's so much of, consumerism, materialism. Children are always on um, their fingertips, and and then there's a lot of competition. Children are pressurized to by heart and vomit, and so the situation in which children are today is in a bit traumatic. If they go out on the roads, there's a lot of traffic, pollution, noise. There are no more beautiful sensory impressions in which children can grow even naturally. So this is the situation, this is the outer situation. So from there, they are transported to, let's say, a Waldorf school. Now, what does the school do? You know, to create beautiful sensory impressions, to create a, s- a sensory impression of warmth, love, and a caring environment prepared carefully by the teacher, by the kindergarten teacher, or by, their respective class teachers. Now, such an environment in which the child comes into, and then all the other activities, whether it is the singing or the music or the storytelling, all of these things add to brightening up the child's life, because what goes inside is what comes out. You
Mm.
see, what goes inside
Yes.
is always what comes out. And so, when you give children an environment of rich sensory impressions, and look how the story is told. For example, let's take storytelling because that's the topic here. The the voice of the narrator, a nice monotonic dreamy voice, a little bit of music added to that, lovely handmade puppets moving on the table. So all these create that kind of a dreamy magical mood of the story. Now this kind of a sensory impression now goes into the child. Now, what is the effect of that? What is the effect of that on the child? The effect is in various areas. You see, one is on the very physical body of the child. You can see that the child who hears the stories a lot from childhood, um, and of course, the other aspect apart from stories is also play. But I will focus on stories. If play and stories have been occupying a child in childhood, then you can see right in the physical body, the skin, the eyes. You can see this well-being in the skin, radiant skin. You can see a twinkle in the child's eyes, so there is something of a beauty and a healthy idea in the child's physical being, and and then coupled with rhythmical storytelling, retelling, recalling the story, and the child builds more and more into the images of the story. The child starts to live in the visual images, in the pictures of the story. Yeah, I'll just give you one small example of my own teaching experience. I used to give in the past, when the world of school was still early, I used to give tuitions to children from the mainstream school. Yeah, and there is this one particular child who says, Mani sir, I have an exam next week. Can you ask me these questions? It's the by heart and vomit method.
Yeah.
And so I was asking him, I looked at the book and said, what are the achievements of Alauddin Khilji? You see? And he went on and he said, Alauddin Khilji was the greatest emperor of the Khilji dynasty. Alauddin Khilji was the greatest emperor of the Khilji dynasty. His secretary general was Mir Jafar, and he conquered. So wait, sir, he conquered. That M, you know? So one can imagine how children have by hearted the very letters, the whole textbook or their notebook where they've written with the teacher's ink marks. Everything comes live into their memory. But what should actually ideally happen is not that children get a print memory. You
Yeah.
see,
Imagery.
children should get an image of
Yes.
Alauddin Khilji standing there in all his bright linen and his jewels and with a sword, and telling his palace, all the people in the assembly how to conquer, and that should be the image the child should be getting. You see, so we have to shift children from a print memory to a picture memory, and this is one
Yes.
of the most important media for the medium for of using stories as a medium. It can give a powerful
Sure.
image. Now we go back to your question about the inner light, and now stories also have many morals hidden within them, and these should remain unsaid. And it should work on the inner soul of the child. Stories build beautiful personality traits. Stories build character. And stories also kind of enthuse a child to come back to school again and again. Stories kind of motivate the child to look forward to coming to school, look forward to meeting that particular teacher, who's a careful and intricate storyteller. This is on the one side. And on the other side, of course, children who hear to a lot of stories, who are exposed to a lot of characters and how they behave in different situations. Children develop a lot of self-image about themselves, self-esteem.
Yeah.
They come out into the world with a lot of confidence. And therefore, children then are able to meaningfully engage with the world, whether it is relating to materials, whether it's relating to people. And this is what shines out from within them.
Yeah.
It is their self-image, and one has to love oneself first. And today children are always frustrated, and they are they look out for entertainment. They look out for, I want to unwind myself. This was once upon a time in the adult world, in the emerging adult world. They used to work from Monday to Friday, and on Saturday, Sundays, they want to unwind. And then they go with a chaotic will and dance and, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
it has creeped into the children's
Yeah.
world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one has to really recreate that world of children. The world of children is full of grace. It's a dreamy world. We must let children be children. We should not let them to become adults very soon, and
Yeah.
that is what is the aim of Waldorf schools.
Yeah.
To
You're
keep
saying the
to
self-image has to shine out. Really.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful, Bunny. Would you like to add to this, Gauri?
Yes, Deepa.
Why do you think stories are important?
Okay. So my approach, like in continuation to whatever Manisa said just now, when we speak about brightening the inner life of the child, where is brightness needed? Where there is darkness.
Darkness.
Isn't it? Where there is darkness, light becomes meaningful, light
Yes.
becomes visible, and light expels the darkness.
Yes.
So, when we are discussing about this question itself, we are all in agreement that there is something called darkness within a human being. Let it be a child, let it be a human being. There is a darkness realm, a dark realm residing within all of us. And what is this dark realm is all about? It is nothing but the unaddressed elements, the unaddressed traits, aspects which are sealed in the unconscious realm of the child.
Yeah,
And
the
they reside
shadow.
there silently. Silently, they are residing for years and years. And if they are not addressed, it may lead to a crippled personality in the child. So, when these sealed, unaddressed elements are allowed to come to the conscious realm through stories, the stories
Wow.
can become a powerful light in
Wow.
bringing light in this dark realm. Then the child's inner life is brightened up like anything. And that is the
Beautiful.
reason stories have to be chosen in such a way like they have the depth of addressing these unsaid and unaddressed things which is residing in every child. Otherwise, the story is a shallow story. It's a empty promise for the child. If it is going to deal with just in the superficial level. So
Yeah.
I feel brightening the inner life is all about dealing and addressing the hidden elements in the unconscious realm of the child. And
Beautiful.
that can be
Absolutely.
done beautifully with stories.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Lovely,
and
Gauri. And yeah,
And Deepa, when children usually hear to a story, while you rebuild the story the next day, no, teachers usually ask
yeah,
them to
one, yeah,
free render them through an artistic work, and it is those drawings and paintings that speak about the children's inner life. You see, and a good teacher can really look into the soul of the child through its paintings.
yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. So, when both of you say children, I think I'm going to ask because there were certain questions that came when I had sent the announcement that I have a child who is 13-year-old. So, does this all apply to that? So, I'm going to lead you to the next question. Are there different kinds of stories, and are different kinds of stories for different age groups? Because there may be parents, we have 32 with us. There may be parents whose children, like my son is 15-year-old. So would they be interested in stories, and does this do the same to older children?
Yeah, yeah, stories are important for all ages. Like Gauri told previously, even adults would like to do I mean, what are we all doing? Day in and day out, we are watching news, we are watching movies, everything is a story. Though it is so different from the way stories are told in a Waldorf school, you see. But there are, of course, various kinds of stories, and if maybe Gauri can speak first and throw light on
Gauri
the
has
kinds of stories.
just dropped
Yeah.
out. Maybe we'll wait for her to join. But you can
Okay.
carry
Okay.
on.
I'll carry on. All right. So, um, different, especially in Steiner schools, there are age-specific stories, and most of them are, Steiner gave a lot of lectures in which he has given us indications for the kind of stories. So one should not use these stories as a prescription, as a prescribed curriculum, but one should use them only as indications. But one should look within one's culture, geography, history, uh, one's festivals, and see what kind of stories one can tell children based on those indications. Yeah, and indications is of the consciousness of children. So let's begin with the kindergarten. Yeah, the
Yeah.
kindergarten is about 4, 5, 6 years old, and children can be immersed in these early years to stories in which there's always a happy ending, where the good wins over evil. So and also there is this main protagonist of the story who faces a lot of hardships, who struggles through many things, and finally gets a reward or something. So these are typically fairy tales, and so fairy tales and then nature stories. You see stories about the butterfly and the cocoons and the water and all the elemental beings, the air, the fire. So all these kinds of stories, the plants and the animals talking to each other, and kind of unveiling a bit of science and math through these their conversations, literally personifying these elemental beings. So those kind of nature stories are very ideal for the kindergarten. Now, when we slowly move to grade one, to the 7-year-old, children have all along, children who are newly born to the time that they are almost till the change of their teeth, in a way are still up there. They are slowly incarnating deeper and deeper into their bodies. So, in a way, they are, in the spiritual world yet. So that is why fairy tales are very good. Yeah, the stories that are not tragedies, are not telling them the hardships of life alone, but the fact that all hardships can be overcome and the good wins over evil. So this continues through the first grade, and there are many lectures in which Steiner asks us to use fairy tales in order to even tease out the alphabets, or to bring out the numbers. And this is what grade one comprises of. Now, when children are getting to become 8-year-olds, then this separation from the spiritual world and starts, and children are becoming more and more adulterated in a
Adult.
sense, and so they now see themselves as different. Before in kindergarten age, they would simply go and sit on mama's lap in front of anybody. It's all mine. Me, mama are all one. You see, they are one with the spiritual world. Now, as they get to come to 8 years, they slowly start to realize that I'm here and the world is there. So they become a little bit objective, and this creates a kind of a polarity in children. So stories that address this polarity, the polarist nature of the 8-year-old, are fables. You see, the animal fables that are there around the world, whether it is the Panchatantra or the Jataka or the Hitopadesha or even the Aesop fables. All these kind of animal stories where it is the wise owl or the foolish crow, where it is the beautiful swan or the ugly duckling.
The polarities.
The polarities, or where the fox invites the stork and gives him some porridge in a flat plate and teases him, and then the stork invites the fox and gives him the porridge in a long necked jar so he can't even
Yeah,
drink it.
yeah.
So these kind of stories are very, very good for the 8-year-old on the one side, because that addresses their inner nature of being different from the world, and also at the same time to give them stories of saints. The stories of saints like Mirabai or Tulsidas or Saint Raghavendra or Purandaradasa or what. All these stories again address how human beings have conquered this polarist nature of the animals. So both these stories are beautiful stories for grade 2. And in grade 3, this separation from the world becomes established. It is confirmed that children now have to stand on their own feet. Yeah. So the ninth year is almost like a midpoint of two aspects of childhood. Before 9, they are innocent children. After 9, they stand in the world on their own. You see, so this transition in the ninth year is quite a difficult phase and is often referred to in Waldorf circles as a crisis. And yeah, and stories that happen through the creation of the universe gives them a lot of hope. And stories like Adam and Eve from the Old Testament of the Bible being thrown out of paradise by God, those stories address what is going on inside, because children were in a paradise all along, and then in the ninth year they feel suddenly thrown out of that secure paradise and have to stand in the world on their own. And Adam and Eve had to go out into the world and work, out of from out of the paradise. So these stories address the consciousness of the ninth year of a 9-year-old child. um, and of course, one can find equivalents of Ramayana, where Rama and Sita and Lakshmana had to leave the palace and go to the forest. Mahabharat, where the Pandavas had to go in exile. So these kind of stories one can pick up from the Indian context also. And then the journey continues. Grade 4 has Norse mythology, where the gods themselves are committing evil. you know so it is like the asuras and the devas in the Samudra Manthanam, no, where the devas also cheat the asuras and drink the nectar
Yeah.
themselves and were not fair. So these kind of stories are very good for the 10, 11, 12. It goes on. Then we talk about the ancient civilizations in grade
Yeah.
5. We talk about the Roman civilizations in grade 6, the voyage of discovery in grade 7, and the Renaissance in grade 8. So the whole journey is full of stories. I mean, that's the context. The whole journey of the Waldorf school is full of stories. And all the other subject teachers, the art and craft teacher, the language teacher, everybody uses the thread of these stories into their lessons. They weave it into their lessons. And this is called horizontal integration. It's another important topic in Waldorf schools. So the thread of those stories are continued throughout the day for the children. So children really live in the imagery very strongly and very deeply. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful, excellent. No, Mani shared, Gauri, while you dropped out, you shared the entire journey. So, if you could share, Gauri, a few examples of how a storytelling has impacted the child, and not just the child, but their household as well. You have something to share with our audience.
Yes. Okay. So sorry about that. There was a technical
No
problem I had
problem.
to.
No problem.
Yes. So when you asked me to share a real life incident, so first I would like to offer my respects to the child and the family because it is going to benefit many people. So I would love to share this experience. There was a boy around 4 years who joined our kindergarten last year, and he was quite happy in the school. But the only challenge I could see in the child was minimal movement. The movement was very minimal. He was not ready to move at all. All that he loved to do was sit in different corners of the class and just observe others, looking at other children playing, and even engaging with children was a challenge for this child because he tried to pick up conversations with adults. So I was just wondering, like, how to motivate this child to move now? Because the mantra of a world of kindergarten is movement, willing. So then I used to take him to the sand play and encourage him to jump and move. And you know what the reply the child was coming out from? He said, "No, Gauri teacher, there are stones, they will prick me. I may fall, I may get hurt, it will pain for me." So all these stories are coming out from this child. So then I just did a very small song which actually carries a story. A very small song. People may wonder, like, it's a simple song. How can this song be a magic? If you're okay, you can just present that song, Deepa. It's a
Please,
very short
please,
song.
please.
And I give a small prelude to the child, like,
Did you create this song, Gauri?
no, no. I just
Okay.
took the song. I used to do this. It's a finger play. Like you mentioned, no, it's a finger play. I can call it a hand gesture play also.
Okay.
And I gave a prelude to the child, not enough one child. See, when we should understand, like when we see a concern in a particular child, we are not going to pull the child alone and sit and work with the child. The curriculum is going to go around the class. So in the circle time, I just sat down and I said, once dad lived a caterpillar. A caterpillar crawled to a top of a tree. I think I will take a nap, said he. He crept under a leaf and spun some crystals and went to sleep. For 6 long months he slept in his cozy bed until spring came along and said, "Wake up, wake up, wake up, you sleepyhead. Wake up, wake up, wake up, you sleepyhead. Out of the leafy cradle, wings to fly. Look at me, look at me. I am a butterfly." And then the butterfly felt so happy that he was able to fly, jump, run from tree to tree and flower to flower. The butterfly lived happily for a long time. I ended the story. And later, the child, whenever he came to the sandpit, and we, of course, we repeated the story for a couple of days, almost for 2 weeks. And then,
Okay.
whenever he came to the sandpit, the spiritual help was also there for us. Few butterflies used to fly in the garden.
Oh,
So whenever
wow.
he looked at a butterfly, he used to tell, "Don't teacher, the butterfly has come." I said, "Yeah, he's flying, he's jumping, he's running." And to note people here all that in fantasy everything is allowed. A tree can speak, a butterfly can jump, a butterfly can run also. So I told this to the child, and then the child was ready to hold my hand and then jump from log to log, run around the sandpit.
Wow.
And that transformation was magical for me because we presented something through an image. And this metamorphosis, it is part of human living. This
Yes.
evolution is part of human living. And of course, I had to have a parent meeting and talk to the parents to make them understand like pampering and treating the child like a prince is actually depriving the child from many opportunities to grow and learn. And of course, our parents always they support us, they partner us in our journey, and they did the needful. And the child eventually was able to become very active. Actually, he became very participative. So this is one incident I
So
would
beautiful.
love to share. Very
So
close.
beautiful. And this is a real life example of how the storytelling and the narration, there was darkness. As you initially said, there was some darkness. The story landed and the child's inner light shone through. So it's such a beautiful example. Do you have another example? We don't have money right now. I think we've lost connection with him. Could you share another example of,
Yes, I would, Deepa. And I feel I would like to use this platform to present this story because it's very crucial and almost, I would say, out of 100, 95 parents are facing this issue today.
okay,
And I don't know
sure.
how parents are informed about the consequence. So, with your permission, I would like to take the opportunity of sharing my
Yes,
experience. Now, before I
please.
share the story, I would like to say that today's technology is really taking us over, isn't it? And I
Yes.
know technology is a blessing, blessing if you use it in the
Yeah.
right way. And with young children, I'm talking about children less than 7 years, how technology is taking them for a ride. Because when you compare the passive mode of a child watching a TV or an animated series and taking a story, it is altogether a different process because when we speak so much about stories, Deepa, I feel the mode with which a story is presented to a child is also important. Parents should not misunderstand that even through an animated series, a child is receiving a story, isn't it? We
Yes.
can't call
Yes.
that like, no, no, the child is not listening to a story. It is a story only. But the methodology, the mode is different.
Yes. Yes.
So when
Yes.
a child is sitting in a passive way and receiving a story from a screen, what is actually happening to the child in this process is the child has to accept the pre-created fixed images on and on and on untiringly. And the child doesn't have any scope to contribute in that process.
Yes.
Because storytelling is a misunderstood thing that, in my understanding, this is my personal opinion. When I'm going to narrate a story to a child, people think that I'm the narrator and the child is the receiver.
Yeah, it's
But
a monologue.
actually speaking, the child is a very active participant because he has to, not has to, the child clearly, brilliantly creates images of the story. So the child is engaging with the narrator. He has a more serious work to do than the narrator, in my understanding.
Yeah,
So, actually, when this passive way of receiving images leaves the child deprived of this opportunity, unlike when the child is going to listen to a story that is narrated by a person or experience the simple puppetry, there is a huge scope for the child to build his imagination, which is providing a beautiful healing medium for the child to embark on an imaginative journey.
correct.
So when children are exposed too much to this kind of screen time, what happened was there was a very
Girish?
young boy, 3.5 years, I should say, and this child
3.5 years.
was what to say.
And
This
this
child
child was,
is there an echo, Deepa?
Yeah, yeah.
what
I
to
don't
say,
know why.
this child is there an echo, Deepa?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know why. Money
Should I
can
continue?
be mute so
Yeah.
that you can. Money, can you mute?
Should I
Money can
continue?
be mute so that you can. Money, can you mute?
Yes. Can I go on, Deepa?
Should I go on mute?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Can I go on, Deepa?
Can I go on? I think there should not be an echo now. Okay. So this child, around 3.5 years, he was in a kindergarten. And during story time, I was observing that the child was not engaging with the story at all, even for a 4 to 5 minute of story. The child would just look around, roll on the floor, do something, trying to talk with others. So all these things was happening. Then I started observing the play of the child because the child's health can be best understood during play. So when I observed the playtime, it was a stunning thing for me. In spite of so many natural materials being available in the kindergarten, a lot of children playing around, the child's attention was only to go and stand near a shelf in this class where all the bags were kept. And this child would go and pull one bag after the other. You know why? To see the different cartoon pictures that was embossed on the bags. One bag, and then he would look at it, smile at it for some time, keep it back, the next bag. Then when I noticed it was Chota Beam, it was Doraemon, all these pictures on this fancy jazzy bags. Then I had to call parents for a meeting, requested the parents to send simple bags without all these pictures, and spoke to this particular parent to wean the child out of this screen exposure because that was not giving the space for the child to unwind and get connected to a story in the class. So there was so much of preoccupation in the child. So the parents actually supported us and weaned him out, and I was able to see a difference within a span of 3 weeks. 2 to 3 weeks, the child started listening to the stories, and even now he's in a kindergarten. He listens to almost 8 to 10 minutes of a story, very, very focused. So this is one thing I wanted to share with parents. Like parents, please be aware that we should not get carried away. Like, okay, even media is providing a story, technology is providing a story. Why not I provide stories to children through that medium? But it makes a huge difference when somebody is going to narrate a story. Of course, if the child is an older child, a teenager child, the child can read a story and imagine rather than getting bombarded with a lot of images. So
Yeah,
this is
sure.
what I would like to
Yeah.
share.
Is does money does in a classroom? Let's say there are 10 children, 7 children. Does one story land on all of them in a same way? Do every child gets something from the story? I'm just curious to know. Money?
So you need to unmute.
Yeah,
So you
yeah.
need to
Are you
unmute.
able to hear me? Yeah. Okay. So I was just saying it's a very interesting question, and In a class, of course, there are 20, 25 children usually in one class, and a teacher can't give 25 different kinds of stories, you see. So one story has to be told in a way that it works on the needs of every child. And here we have a beautiful indication by Steiner of something called the study of temperaments. You see, um, just like we have in the Indian context, the Vata, Kapha, Pitta, of the fire quality, the air quality, and all of that, or the Rajasic, Tamasic, Sattvic. Like that, Steiner introduced what already existed from the Greeks. Right? It was not his. It was not his invention. Called the temperaments. So he says that in every classroom that there are four kinds of children. There is the earth child, and the earth child is usually very melancholic in her personality. Uh, feels that the whole burden of the earth is on her, and is generally aloof, silent, sometimes to the point of being sad. But the positive qualities of a melancholic are that she's very helpful and caring for everybody who's in trouble. You see, so that's the positive and the negative shades of the melancholic child, the earth child. And then there is the air child. The air child is like air here, there, and everywhere, you see, and a little bit distracted, unable to focus on the negative side. But there is also a positive, helpful quality, which is wherever there is an air child, there's a lot of camaraderie, fun, happiness, you see. So that's the sanguine child. The air child is called the sanguine child. Then, of course, we have the a very assertive and aggressive child, full of missionary zeal to complete tasks. So there is this positive quality of someone who's very leadership in his nature, and on the negative side, somebody who's very angry, can make easily enemies. So there is this kind of a quality, which is the choleric quality. And I'm just simplifying all this. I'm making it very simple. And then there is the fourth child, which is the water child, which just settles in wherever there is comfortable space, it settles in. So this child always looks out for comfort, is resistant to change, in a way appears lethargic, or to the point even lazy. On the helpful side, this child, because he's always sitting or in some a particular place, he's very observant. Like in my classroom, I often tend to misplace my pen or my key or something, and then I ask, "Oh my God, where did I leave my key?" And it's always the phlegmatic child who will say, "Sir, when you came in, you kept it in that place." Very observant. So there is no temperament that is either good or bad. Each temperament has a positive and a negative side to it. So now, how do we tell a story to suit each of these temperaments? You see, so for example, a sanguine child, the story has to be told by the teacher in a very bright and lively manner. And for a melancholic child, it should be a little bit, the sad parts of the story must be highlighted, and then the child gets interest. The pains and the struggles must be highlighted. Then the melancholic child will listen to the story with a lot of interest. You can see it in their drawings. Actually, you can see the temperaments very clearly in their drawings. And then the choleric child likes the valiant battles and all those kind of stuff, while the phlegmatic child may like only the landscapes, and so you can see these kind of qualities. Now, can I share an example of a story, how it can be told for the different temperaments? Yeah. Okay.
Definitely.
So, uh, yeah. So, I'm going to tell one story in four different ways. Yeah. How it suits the temperaments of different children. So, this story is about a king. Okay, a warrior king who fought valiantly in the battle, but he died in the battle. Yeah, he was surrounded by enemies and he was slashed to death. And the queen ran to the battlefield and saw the king dying. Ever since, she had, very painful memories, and she also had a son. Yeah, she gave birth to a son in that time, and she decided that her son should not know about battles or about even nights. So what she did was she shifted her home to a forest. Yeah, and she lived there. Of course, there were servants and everybody helping them, but nobody should talk to the prince about swordsmanship or any kind of valiant courage and battles or knighthood. Nobody's supposed to talk about it. The child was all around. Okay, this is the story. Now, how do you tell it to a sanguine child? Yeah, for whom a lot of distraction and a lot of things are necessary. So here you want to say something like how the boy grew up. Yeah, so a queen mother lived in the middle of the forest with her young prince, and the prince spent most of his time playing in the fields and feeding the chickens and going on a boating ride or sometimes fishing, and most often he would run in the open fields or climb the trees. On some occasions he went out to the forest to collect firewood or to bring some flowers for his mother. So you kind of, tell all the different things, and the sanguine child's interest, is ensured. Now, if you want to say that to a melancholic child, and then you say that the mother preferred him doing all these kind of things, like playing and running around, rather than swordsmanship and battles, because she was fearful that the child would meet the same fate as her husband. You see? Now we go to a melancholic child. The same story. Yeah? So the queen mother had seen her husband die painfully in a battle, and ever since she hardly slept. Yeah, so she tossed and turned in her bed many a night, and she was fearful that her son might know of his lineage, that his father was king. And so she had worried a lot and instructed every servant and everybody in that forest home not to instruct her child about anything to do with battles. Yeah, and she worried about it so much that she started to turn pale and thin, because she was worried that her son might meet the same fate as her husband. So can you see? So the what we are focusing here on the melancholic is completely different.
The
What would you say
melancholy
for
is
the
there.
choleric? Yeah, you would say that the warrior king died in a battle, fighting valiantly, protecting the great king Alinder, or somebody who's there, and he led the battle on the front in shining armor and on the black stallion, and his sword came like a lightning, and he killed every enemy that came his way. And when the sun was about to set, unfortunately his shield broke, and still he stood there with courage and fought his enemies, but they all rallied around him and they knelt him a death blow. Now, this is going to be so appetizing for a choleric child. He likes to listen to all the way the battles were fought. Now, what about the phlegmatic child? Yeah? For the phlegmatic child, you would probably say that the queen mother lived with her son in the middle of the forest in a very comfortable home, surrounded by servants, and they had servants for everything. There were cooks who cooked delicious meals, and the prince had, wonderful food to eat. And then there were maids who would clean the place and wash everything and keep the house picked and span. And then there were a lot of men who would do the gardening, or would sow the seeds and harvest the plants, and there were men who would go hunting for a game and bring back animals home, and so on and so forth. Basically the home was surrounded by good smells. There was a warm fire always. So these and the mother created this kind of an environment to distract the child from hearing about battles, and because she feared that he might one day have the same fate like his father. So you see, it is the same story, but all the different sensory impressions are different.
Yeah. When you say the
Yeah.
story in the classroom,
When you say the
do you say it
story in the
differently or do
classroom,
you say it in the same way?
uh, do you say it differently or do you say it in the same way? Um, we can say a story which addresses the needs of all these children, either on the same day or sometimes you retell and retell the story. So you keep adding on more and more parts every day. You see?
Yeah.
And if you tell us, even generally, if you tell a story, just a straightforward story, and then also you will see that children pick on only those scenes, the sanguine will happily get lost in his, joyous affairs. The melancholic
Yeah.
will start to drown in her sadness of the ill king or the, the pains of the princess who was cursed and all of that. So she will get lost in, and they will start to dream about it. They may not
Yeah.
even complete the story, and it's okay. One doesn't have to listen to the whole story and answer all the questions that you ask them. The power of the story is that it acts on the soul of the child, and not
Yeah.
that you tell the whole story, you memorize it. That's not the purpose of the story, you see.
Yeah.
So when
Yeah.
children do get
Beautiful.
lost in their dreaminess or even go to sleep with those images, it's the best. And that is the healing nature of stories.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. I just wish
Yeah.
I was a 1-year-old, 4-year-old child and joined your
I
kindergarten.
just wish I was a 1-year-old, 4-year-old child and joined your kindergarten. Yeah. True.
I'm so tempted to. So
Many of our
beautiful,
parents actually
lovely.
tell us,
Yeah,
especially
I'm so tempted.
after starting
So beautiful, lovely.
the current online classes. No, many parents also are now experiencing the world of classroom, and they often tell me in PTMs that I wish we were also a child, and then we could go to a world of school.
Thank you so much. I think it was a fantastic conversation
Thank
we
you
had.
so much.
Uh, could
I
we
think it was a
close this
fantastic
space by
conversation we had.
sharing about the
Could we
upcoming
close this
storytelling event
space
that would
by
coming up?
sharing about the upcoming storytelling event that would coming up?
There is an echo. There is an
Yeah,
echo. You're not clear. Sir, can you go on mute? There is some
Yeah,
disturbance coming.
clear. Sir, can you go
I
on
don't know
mute?
why.
Some disturbance. I don't know why.
We'll try. Yeah. Is it better now, Deepa? Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, could you share about the event?
About which event, Deepa? I'm not getting it.
About the event.
For Katha
Yeah, yeah.
Sambrama.
Shall I do it?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
please.
Please.
For Katha Sambrama. Yes, sir. Yeah. So, once a mother asked the famous scientist Einstein, how do I raise my child? Can you name three things that I have to give my child? Three important things in my parenting. And Einstein said, stories, more stories, and more stories. So, this this season we have come up with this idea. All the teachers of the Kingdom of Childhood, I mean, they have really done their best. From the last 1 or 2 months, they have been stitching dolls and they have been creating the ambience and the trying to create the mood of magic, as we call, in our kindergarten, to especially for this upcoming event. And we've aptly called it Katha Sambrama. It's an event, a very important event at the Kingdom of Childhood, and we are trying to bring out a lot of stories, but we want to go one at a time because it's online and we're all so new to it. So we started with the Christmas festival, upcoming Christmas festival, and have come up with this story of a young girl, and of course it's accompanied by music. Teachers have stitched handmade dolls. They've made beautiful clothes for those dolls, and it's such intricacies have gone into making of this story. I'm sure people will really enjoy it. Not just children. I'm telling you, it can be even the adults. I'm sure everyone will have something to take home from this story. And parents, of course, I'm telling you, must enroll into this program because they have many aspects to take home as parents in the art of storytelling. Yeah, and of course, anybody will enjoy the story. We have just said children above 4 years can come into the story, mostly because it's online. We kept it at 4. Otherwise, I'm sure stories are good even for younger children. So, yeah, Gauri.
So, for all the audience, I will share the flyer
For all the
on Poorna
audience,
Wellbeing
I
page
will
so
share the
that all of you
flyer
can register.
on
The
Poorna
registration
Wellbeing
link will
page
also be given.
so that all of you register. The registration will be given.
Yeah. So let's all be there. And somebody, Radha, you asked, are there storytelling sessions for adults?
So let's
This
all
you
be
can
there. And
attend. You
somebody,
will
Radha,
enjoy.
asked, are there storytelling sessions for adults? This you can enjoy.
So thank you, Mani. Thank you, Gauri. And
Thank you,
yeah,
Mani. Thank you, Gauri. And
thank you, everyone.
yeah,
Brilliant audience. Consistently, there were
thank you,
30 to 40
everyone.
people
Brilliant
following
audience.
uh, our
Consistently, there were
conversation.
30 to 40
For
people
people to
doing
understand
our
the
conversation.
urge and the
For
urge,
people
the
to
need for us
understand
to listen
the
to something as important, as
urge
simple, as
and
beautiful as this.
the need for
Thank
us
you.
to listen to
And if need
something
be,
as
we can
important,
come
as simple,
again
as
and have
beautiful as
other
this.
conversation
Thank
on
you.
many other
And
aspects
if need be, we can come
that are
again and have
important
another
to
conversation
children
on
and
many other aspects
with respect to storytelling.
that are important to children
Sure.
and with respect to storytelling.
This echo is so
Thank
annoying.
you very much, Deepa,
Thank you.
for
This
joining us
echo
in
is
this.
so annoying.
Yeah, I just said thank you very much for this. And I and Gauri would hardly know what to do in a Facebook. And
Yeah,
it's
my
very
pleasure.
nice to
My
know
pleasure.
that we
Yeah.
can share
There is a
our life
question.
My
in
pleasure.
these
My pleasure.
platforms.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There is a question.
Yeah.
Can you please tell us
Deepa,
some Waldorf fairy tale books for kids less than
can you
7 years
please
old?
tell us some Waldorf fairy tale books for kids less than 7 years old?
World of fairy tale
Can
books.
you, sir, Deepa's question is echoing. I think you need to go on mute again. Sorry, sir.
Sir,
Sorry.
Deepa's question is echoing. I think you need to go on mute again. Sorry, sir. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, Deepa, please repeat. For me, the audibility is different.
Can you tell us some Waldorf fairy tale books for kids less than 7 year old?
Okay. So the Grimm's Brothers version, no, that is what we follow. It is quite authentic. So the Grimm's Brothers fairy tales, it serves very beautifully for between 0 to 7 years. But even there, I would like to clearly state like fairy tales, parents can choose post 4 years at least, because before that, children can really get enriched through nature stories. Nature stories, it's a topic altogether because the happenings in the nature can be brought in the form of stories. So, and post 4 years, you can start bringing simple fairy tales which works on sequential rhythmical repetition, like a Goldilocks, where a particular sequence will keep repeating. So that will really enrich the life of a 4 year old or 4.5. And post 4.5 years, you can happily give long fairy tales, understanding the needs of the child. So, parents, my request is please understand the age, the consciousness, and also even sometimes the biographical experiences of the child. All these things had to be taken into account when we choose a story. But to underline, I'm a strong proponent of fairy tales. Like Manisa said, that was once upon a time. I was not able to connect to fairy tales. Now I'm a very strong proponent. Fairy tales can meet the need of the uneducated mind of a child and also mind of a sophisticated adult like all of us. So fairy tales,
Beautiful.
it's universal. It's a treasure. I relish and I read fairy tales a lot, and it really pulls my spirit up. So don't refrain from reading fairy tales. It's for all of us. Yes, Deepa.
Thank you. Thank you.
I
Thank you. And
think
there are many who are expressing their gratitude. And the next question is, can you please also tell books for 7+ years old? I think
yeah,
story books or whatever.
yes. I think sir can answer that. Yes, sir.
You need to
So you're,
unmute.
yeah, you're on mute, sir.
Yeah, I went through the whole list of stories as per the age just a few minutes ago. But um, as I told you, once again, that is only an indicative list. And stories are so wide and large based on the geography or the culture or the festive season. One can choose the kind of stories that one must tell children. And the range of stories can go from fables to mythologies to legends to epics to autobiographies. So um, some of the best stories for older children are autobiographies of great people, and the most easiest autobiographies are that of your own. As parents, you must share your own autobiographies with children, and that can be quite fascinating and amusing for children to hear. And they're very
And
good
I
for
think
children who are 13, 14, 15.
biographies, we can make a note that
And I think
biographies can go
the
around
biographies, we
14
can
years,
make a note that biographies
isn't
can
it?
go around 14 years.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
So we are
That's what I'm
forced to
saying,
put
I
you
said.
on mute.
No?
When we have to
So we
speak,
are
you have to
forced
go
to
on
put you
mute.
on
That
mute.
is the game we are
When
going
you
to
have
play
to
now.
speak, you have to go on mute. That is the game we are going to play
I
now.
see. I don't know what's happening.
Sorry, sir. So actually, Jetaka tales, all these things can be brought to children post 7 years. Jetaka tales, Aesop fables, all these things. And biographies, please, you can introduce that close to 14 years when the child is into teen.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let parents not get confused about it and start bringing biographies when the child is around 8 or 9 years. Please don't do that. So let us be clear in our community. Yes.
And where do you get nature stories? They're asking. Neeraja is asking, where do you get nature stories?
Nature stories, there are many versions online. You can go and explore by foreign mentors we have. But personally, my strong feel is mothers and fathers, teachers can create beautiful nature stories on your own. Please do try. Because I'll just give a clue, nature stories for a very young child, like around 2.5-year old, can be a very simple description of a mango tree. It need not have a beginning, it need not have a finish. Description of a rainy day can become a beautiful story for a very young child. And slowly you can upgrade those nature stories by bringing more characters in the story from nature, because nature is something which is mysterious, which is fresh, which is new. Every day it is new, isn't it? So you can bring those natural happenings, nature based happenings through stories. So you can try to pen your story, or you can go online and so there are many beautiful versions.
Thank you, and we'll say bye for now. Yeah, people are all thanking and saying it's an interesting program. Great, we could do that. And if there is more interest, we'll come back again.
Sure. Yes,
Thank
no
you.
problem.
Thank you, Mani. Thank you, Gauri.
My pleasure, my humble gratitude to all the listeners and to Deepa especially. And just a last note, parents, just enjoy your parenting journey without any guilt pangs. Just make your journey meaningful and celebrate your child for who or she is. That's all. That would be my request.
Thank you. Thank you.